The millionaire's daughter was only 4 months from death, but the gardener shocked the father when Richard Anderson collapsed onto the leather sofa of his mansion in Beverly Hills, New York, holding the test results with trembling hands. His only daughter, Emily, just 6 years old, had been diagnosed with a rare digestive system disease that prevented her from processing any type of nutrient. The best doctors in the country were categorical. She had at most 4 months to live. The little girl, who once ran through the estate's gardens with her flowing blonde hair, was now completely bald due to aggressive treatments and refused any food. It was in this moment of total despair that Matthew, the estate's gardener, hesitantly knocked on the office door. "Mr. Richard, may I speak with you?" asked the 28-year-old young man, nervously holding his straw hat between his hands. Richard looked up with eyes red from crying. Matthew had worked there for 2 years, always discreet, tending to the gardens with impressive dedication. The businessman had never spoken with him for more than 5 minutes at a time. "What is it, Matthew?" "This isn't a good time," replied Richard, trying to control his voice. "I know about Miss Emily's situation, sir. I overheard the conversation with Dr. Jennifer on the veranda." Matthew took a deep breath. "My grandmother, who raised me in rural Vermont, always said she knew special recipes for children who couldn't eat. She saved many children in our town." Richard looked at the young man as if he had gone mad. How could a simple gardener help where the best doctors had failed? "Matthew, I understand your good intention, but specialized doctors have already tried everything. My wife is one of the top nutritionists in the country, and she herself can't get Emily to accept even a glass of water." "I know, sir, but my grandmother cured my own mother when she was little. She had the same problem as Miss Emily. The doctors back then also said there was no hope." Something in the sincerity of Matthew's brown eyes made Richard hesitate. The desperation was so great that any thread of hope seemed like a life preserver. "What kind of recipes did your grandmother use?" "Combinations of herbs and roots from our own garden, sir. She said that some plants, when mixed the right way, can make the body accept nutrients differently." "May I try?" Richard was silent for several long minutes. From upstairs came the faint sounds of Emily coughing in her room. Jennifer, his wife, had gone out to get more medications that would likely make no difference. "One try," he said finally. "But if there's any worsening, you stop immediately." Matthew nodded vigorously and ran out to the garden. Richard watched him through the window as the young man carefully picked some leaves and roots, examining each plant like an expert. There was something in his movements that demonstrated deep knowledge, far beyond what would be expected from an ordinary gardener. 2 hours later, Matthew returned to the house holding a ceramic bowl with a greenish paste that gave off a sweet, earthy aroma. "May I go up to see Miss Emily, sir?" Richard led Matthew to the second-floor bedroom. Emily lay in bed, pale as a ghost, her dull blue eyes fixed on the ceiling. For 4 days, she hadn't accepted even a sip of water. "Hi, Princess," said Matthew in a soft voice, approaching the bed. "I brought something tasty for you." Emily slowly turned her head. Something about Matthew's calm presence caught her attention in a way even the doctors couldn't. "This paste tastes like vanilla and honey. Would you like to try just a tiny spoonful?" To Richard's utter surprise, Emily gave a weak nod. Matthew picked up a small spoon, placed a tiny portion of the paste, and brought it to the girl's lips. Emily opened her mouth and accepted the first spoonful in 4 days. Richard held his breath. Emily chewed slowly, her eyes closing as if she was savoring something delicious, and then swallowed. "More," she whispered, opening her eyes for the first time in days. Matthew gave her another spoonful, and then another. In 15 minutes, Emily had consumed half the bowl. Richard couldn't believe what he was seeing. "How did you do this?" asked Richard, his voice choked. "My grandmother used to say that the secret wasn't just in the plants, but in how we prepare them with care. She taught me that each ingredient has a right time to be harvested and a special way to be mixed." Emily fell asleep for the first time in 3 days with a smile on her face. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When Jennifer came home that afternoon, she found Richard in the garden talking animatedly with Matthew about medicinal plants. His wife's expression changed drastically when he told her what had happened. "You allowed a gardener to give an untested mixture to our sick daughter." Dr. Jennifer's voice rose several tones. "Richard, have you completely lost your mind?" "Jennifer, she ate. For the first time in 4 days, our daughter accepted food." "This is medical irresponsibility. We don't know what effects these herbs might have on her already weakened system. I'm going to run blood tests immediately." Jennifer ran up to Emily's room and was shocked to find her daughter sitting on the bed, playing with a doll that had been abandoned on the floor for weeks. "Mommy, Uncle Matthew made some really tasty food. Can I have more?" Jennifer examined her daughter with clinical eyes. Emily's cheeks had a slight rosy color that hadn't appeared in weeks. Her eyes shone with a vitality she thought had been lost forever. "Sweetheart, let's do some tests first, okay?" The test results came in the next day and left Jennifer completely perplexed. Emily's hydration levels had improved significantly, and for the first time in months, her nutritional indicators showed a positive trend. Even so, Jennifer couldn't accept that medical science was being surpassed by home remedies from a country lady. "Richard, we need to admit Emily to a specialized clinic. These results could be a coincidence. We can't risk her life with home treatments." "Jennifer, our daughter is getting better. For the first time in months, we have real hope." "Hope based on superstition. I've been a doctor for 15 years. I know what's best for my daughter." The argument continued through the night. Richard argued that they should give the alternative treatment a chance, while Jennifer insisted they were wasting precious time with unscientific methods. The next morning, Jennifer made a unilateral decision. She hired private nurses to stay with Emily 24 hours a day and prohibited any contact between the girl and Matthew. "From today on, only qualified professionals will care for our daughter," she announced to Richard. "And I want you to fire that gardener immediately." Richard was torn. Part of him understood his wife's medical concerns, but another part saw that Emily had only responded positively to Matthew's treatment. "Jennifer, let's give it a few more days. If she gets worse, we'll follow your medical protocol." "No, I won't risk my daughter's life because of your emotional whims." Emily, who had spent 2 days accepting only Matthew's mixtures, began refusing all food offered by the nurses. Her condition began to deteriorate rapidly. On the 3rd day, without the special recipes, Emily had a severe crisis during the night. Her temperature spiked, and she began having seizures. Richard and Jennifer rushed to the hospital with their unconscious daughter in their arms. At the hospital, while Emily was being treated in the emergency room, Richard made a decision that would change everything. He secretly called Matthew and asked him to come to the hospital with his recipes. "Doctor, the child is completely dehydrated and malnourished," explained the on-duty physician. "We'll do everything we can, but her condition is very serious." When Matthew arrived at the hospital, Richard met him in the parking lot. "Matthew, I know I'm asking a lot, but I need you to try again. Emily will only eat if it's you." "Mr. Richard, Dr. Jennifer won't allow it." "She doesn't need to know. I'll distract her while you try." Richard managed to convince Jennifer to speak with the doctors about treatment options. Meanwhile, Matthew discreetly entered Emily's room. The girl was connected to various machines, but when she saw Matthew, her eyes slowly opened. "Uncle Matthew, you came," she whispered in a very weak voice. "Of course I came, Princess. I brought your favorite food." Emily accepted small spoonfuls of the mixture prepared by Matthew. Within an hour, she had consumed more nutrients than in the last 3 days. When Jennifer returned to the room and found Matthew feeding Emily, her fury was uncontrollable. "Security! Remove this man immediately!" she shouted. "Richard, how could you do this behind my back?" "Jennifer, look at our daughter. She's responding." "That doesn't matter. He has no medical training. We're playing with her life." The argument between the couple was so intense that Emily began to cry. The doctors had to intervene and ask them to leave the room. In the hospital hallway, Richard and Jennifer faced the biggest crisis of their marriage. "Richard, either you choose to trust medicine or you choose to trust old wives' remedies. I can't live in this uncertainty anymore." Jennifer, our daughter is dying and you're worried about medical protocols. What matters is that she gets better. What matters is that we do the proper treatment. As a doctor, I can't accept quackery." Matthew, who had overheard the argument, approached the couple. "Sorry to interrupt, I understand Dr. Jennifer's concern. If you'd like, I can explain exactly what's in the recipes and how my grandmother developed these combinations." Jennifer looked at Matthew with disdain. "And what would a gardener know about nutrition and medicine? My grandmother wasn't just a folk healer, doctor. She worked for 40 years as a midwife and herbalist in our region. She saved hundreds of children with problems similar to Emily's. Those are folk tales. Medicine doesn't work based on popular beliefs." Richard intervened. "Jennifer, what harm is there in hearing what he has to say? All medical treatments have failed so far." "Fine," said Jennifer, crossing her arms. "Explain these miracle recipes." Matthew pulled an old worn notebook from his pocket. "This notebook belonged to my grandmother. For decades she recorded the combinations that worked for different digestive problems. In the case of children like Emily, she discovered that certain plants, when combined in specific proportions, create a synergy that facilitates nutrient absorption in the intestines." Jennifer took the notebook and flipped through the yellowed pages. Her eyebrows raised upon seeing the precision of the notes: dosages, plant harvesting times, preparation temperatures, all meticulously documented. "These notes are too detailed for someone without formal education," admitted Jennifer, surprised. "My grandmother studied with the Jesuits when she was young. She always said that folk knowledge and scientific knowledge could go hand in hand." Richard watched his wife examine the notebook. For the first time he saw an expression of professional curiosity on her face, instead of just disdain. "Some of these plants really do have proven anti-inflammatory properties," murmured Jennifer, more to herself. "And this combination here could theoretically aid digestion." "Exactly, doctor. My grandmother always said that it's not enough to know the plants. You need to understand how they interact with each other." At that moment, a nurse came running out of Emily's room. "Doctor, the girl is asking for water and food. She's awake and talking." Richard, Jennifer, and Matthew ran to the room. Emily was sitting up in the hospital bed, with more color in her face than she'd had in weeks. "Mom, Dad, I'm really hungry," she said, smiling weakly. Jennifer held back tears. As a doctor, she knew that this sudden improvement after consuming Matthew's mixtures couldn't be a coincidence. "Matthew," she said, her voice much softer, "will you agree to collaborate with me? I want to study these recipes scientifically. Perhaps we can combine your traditional knowledge with laboratory analysis." "Of course, doctor. My grandmother always said that good knowledge is knowledge shared." In the following days, Jennifer worked intensively with Matthew to understand the properties of each ingredient. She was impressed to discover that many of Matthew's grandmother's intuitions had a solid scientific basis. "Matthew, I need to ask you a personal question," said Jennifer during one of their study sessions. "Why did you become a gardener? With this knowledge about medicinal plants, you could have pursued a career in healthcare." Matthew looked down, clearly uncomfortable with the question. "It's a long story, doctor. We have time. Emily is sleeping and Richard went to take care of some things at the office." Matthew took a deep breath. "I started studying medicine at the University of Vermont. I was in my 3rd year when my grandmother became seriously ill. She was the only family I had left, so I dropped everything to take care of her." Jennifer looked at him with new eyes. "You dropped out of medical school to take care of your grandmother." "She raised me after my parents died in an accident when I was 8. It was the least I could do for her." "And why didn't you go back to your studies afterward?" "When my grandmother passed, I no longer had the money to pay for university. I came to New York looking for work and ended up specializing in gardening because it was what I knew how to do with plants." Jennifer was silent for a few minutes, processing this revelation. "Matthew, you saved my daughter. I can no longer deny that. I want to make you a proposal." "What kind of proposal, doctor?" "I will finance your studies so you can finish medical school. In return, I want us to work together, developing a scientific protocol based on your grandmother's knowledge." "Doctor, I can't accept that. I've done so little compared to what you all have done for me." "So little? You saved my daughter's life. It is my duty to repay you in some way." Richard entered the room at that moment and found his wife with tears in her eyes. "What happened? Is Emily all right?" "Richard, we need to talk, the two of us." That night, Jennifer told Richard Matthews' whole story. How he had dropped out of medical school to care for his grandmother, how his knowledge was much deeper than they had imagined, and how she wanted to help him resume his studies. "Richard, I was completely wrong about him. I judged by appearance and social standing without knowing his story. Jennifer, you have always been a fair person. The desperation over Emily made you act out of fear. No, Richard, it was prejudice, plain and simple. I used to think medical knowledge only came from expensive universities and framed diplomas." The next day, Jennifer and Richard called Matthew for an official conversation. "Matthew, we want to make a formal proposal," said Richard. "Besides funding your medical studies, we want you to be our partner in a research project on integrative medicine." "Mr. Richard, I don't know much about business. You don't need to understand it now. We'll hire the best lawyers to structure everything fairly for you." Jennifer added, "Matthew, I want to publish a scientific article about Emily's case. This could help other children with similar problems. Would you agree to be a co-author?" "Doctor, I haven't even finished college yet." "Knowledge doesn't need a diploma to be valid. Your grandmother developed a therapy that traditional medicine couldn't replicate. That deserves academic recognition." Emily, who was listening to the conversation from her bed, intervened with her still weak but determined voice. "Uncle Matthew, you have to accept. That way you can help other children like me." Everyone laughed at the girl's intervention. Matthew knelt by her bedside. "Princess, if you think it's a good idea, then I accept." "Do you really accept?" asked Richard. "I accept, Mr. Richard, but with one condition." "What is it?" "I want to keep taking care of your garden. The plants that saved Emily grow there, and I want to make sure they're always available for her." Richard and Jennifer looked at each other, moved. "Matthew, you'll always be welcome in our home," said Jennifer. "Not as an employee, but as family." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The following months were transformative for the whole family. Emily continued to improve consistently with the treatment developed by Matthew and scientifically supervised by Jennifer. Her hair began to grow back, first as a fine fuzz, then stronger and shinier. Matthew resumed his medical studies through a special program for students who had interrupted their course. His grades were exceptional, especially in subjects related to pharmacology and nutrition. Jennifer discovered that working with integrative medicine opened completely new horizons in her career. The article they published about Emily's case received international recognition and opened doors for broader research. Richard, who had always been focused only on business, began to take an interest in preventive medicine. He transformed part of his company into a research center on therapeutic nutrition. But not everything was roses during this period. 3 months after starting treatment, Emily had an unexpected relapse. During a Sunday morning, she woke up with intense abdominal pain and vomited several times. Jennifer and Richard panicked. Had the treatment stopped working? Matthew was urgently called and found Emily crying in pain in her room. "Uncle Matthew, my tummy hurts so much," she said between sobs. Matthew carefully examined the plants he had used in the recent mixtures. He noticed that some leaves had a slightly different color. "Mr. Richard, were these plants harvested from the same place as always?" "Yes, from our garden. Why?" "It turns out that medicinal plants are very sensitive to environmental conditions. Too much rain, too much sun, even the phase of the moon can affect their properties." Jennifer listened to the explanation with scientific interest. "Are you saying that plants can vary in potency depending on external factors?" "Exactly, Doctor. My grandmother always said you need to talk to the plants to understand when they're at their ideal point." "Does that mean the treatment isn't reliable?" asked Richard, worried. "No, sir. It means it needs to be constantly adjusted. Like any medication, the dosage must be tailored to the patient's response." Matthew prepared a new mixture, using plants harvested at a different time and with slightly altered proportions. Emily accepted the new recipe, and within a few hours, her pain decreased significantly. "Matthew, "This is fascinating from a scientific standpoint," said Jennifer. "You're doing personalized medicine intuitively." "My grandmother called it listening to the child's body. She said every person responds uniquely, even to the same treatment." This episode further strengthened the family's trust in Matthew's method, but also alerted them to the need for constant monitoring. 2 months later, Richard received an unexpected call. "Mr. Anderson, my name is Dr. Daniel Williams from Mount Sinai Hospital. I heard through Dr. Jennifer about your daughter's case. I have a patient with similar symptoms and would like to know if a consultation with Mr. Matthew would be possible." Richard was surprised. Emily's story had spread further than they imagined. "Doctor, Matthew is not a licensed physician yet. He's finishing his undergraduate degree." "I understand, sir. But his knowledge saved your daughter. My patient is an 8-year-old boy who is in the same situation Emily was in. The parents are desperate." Richard discussed the request with Jennifer and Matthew. "Matthew, do you feel prepared to treat other children?" "Mr. Richard, I want to help, but I'm afraid I won't be able to replicate the success we had with Emily." Jennifer intervened. "Matthew, now we have more scientific knowledge behind the method. I can monitor the cases to ensure everything is done safely. And if it doesn't work, doctor, then we will have learned something important for the next attempt. Science is like that, a series of trials and learnings." They decided to accept the case, but with great caution. The boy was named Jacob and had been given up on by doctors after 6 months of unsuccessful treatments. When Matthew met Jacob, he immediately realized his case was different from Emily's. Although the symptoms were similar, the boy's reaction to the plants was completely different. "Dr. Jennifer, the recipes that worked with Emily are not having an effect on Jacob." "That was expected, Matthew. Every organism is unique. Let's try other combinations." For 2 weeks, Matthew tested different mixtures, always under Jennifer's medical supervision. Jacob showed small improvements, but nothing comparable to the rapid results Emily had shown. "Maybe I'm not as good at this as I thought," said Matthew, discouraged. "Matthew, medicine isn't magic," replied Jennifer. "Sometimes it takes time to find the right treatment. The important thing is not to give up." Emily, who had become very close to Matthew, noticed his sadness. "Uncle Matthew, are you upset?" "A little bit, sweetheart. I'm trying to help a boy like you, but it's not working. Do you want me to talk to him? Sometimes children know things adults don't." Richard and Jennifer found the suggestion interesting. They took Emily to meet Jacob at the hospital. "Hi, Jacob. I'm Emily. I was sick like you, too." Jacob, who had been downcast for weeks, smiled upon seeing another child. "How did you get better?" "Uncle Matthew made some special foods for me. But you know what? At first I didn't want to eat them either." "Why didn't you want to?" "Because I was scared. All the medicines the doctors gave me were bad. I thought Uncle Matthew's food would be bad too." "Yours wasn't bad. It was tasty. But I only found that out when I stopped being scared and decided to trust him." Jacob became thoughtful. "Do you think I'm afraid of Uncle Matthew's food?" "Maybe. When we're sick for a long time, we become afraid of everything." This conversation between the children gave Matthew and Jennifer a new perspective. Perhaps the problem wasn't just physical, but also emotional. "Jacob, would you like to try making the mixtures with me?" asked Matthew. "That way you see all the ingredients and can decide if you want to try them." "Can I really help?" "Of course. Emily always helps me at home. You two can be my official assistants." Jacob's active involvement in preparing the mixtures completely changed his attitude. He began accepting food more easily, and gradually his condition improved. "Matthew, you've discovered something very important," said Jennifer. "The psychological aspect of treatment is just as important as the physical one." "My grandmother always said that, doctor. She used to say real medicine treats the whole person, not just the illness." The success with Jacob opened doors for other cases. Within 6 months, Matthew and Jennifer had treated 12 children with similar digestive problems. Not all cases were complete successes, but most showed significant improvement. Richard, seeing the positive impact of their work, decided to formalize everything through a foundation. "Matthew, I want to create the Emily Anderson Foundation for Children's Integrative Medicine. Will you accept being the technical director? Mr. Anderson, I'm still studying. Exactly why? You can grow along with the foundation. But I don't understand administration, management. For that we have specialized professionals. You handle the technical part, they handle the administrative part. Jennifer completely supported the idea. Matthew, this is the opportunity to multiply your grandmother's knowledge on a national scale. Imagine how many children we can help. Emily, who was now completely healthy and had returned to school, also gave her opinion. Uncle Matthew, you have to accept. Then other boys and girls like me can get better too. And will you keep helping me prepare the mixtures? Asked Matthew, joking. Of course. I'll be your assistant forever. Everyone laughed at the seriousness with which Emily made her commitment. The creation of the foundation brought unexpected challenges. Richard discovered that registering an organization focused on alternative medicine faced much bureaucracy and resistance from regulatory bodies. Richard, maybe it's better to register as an academic research center, suggested Jennifer. That way we avoid conflicts with medical boards. Good idea. We can establish partnerships with universities to give more scientific credibility to the work. Meanwhile, Matthew faced his own challenges at college. Some professors and classmates viewed him with suspicion for working with folk medicine. Matthew, you need to be careful not to mix folklore with science, said his advisor during a meeting. This could harm your academic credibility. Professor, but the clinical results are real. We have documentation of all cases. Results are important, but they need to be explained through rigorous scientific methods. You can't simply say, it works because Grandma said so. Matthew realized he needed to find a balance between honoring his grandmother's traditional knowledge and meeting the demands of modern medicine. Dr. Jennifer, I'm having difficulties at college. Some professors think my work isn't scientific enough. Matthew, that's normal. Integrative medicine still faces prejudice in academic circles, but we have solid data to support our approach. How can I convince the professors? Let's structure your thesis research focusing on the chemical analysis of the plants you use. That way you demonstrate there's solid scientific basis behind each recipe. Jennifer's suggestion was valuable. Matthew spent the following months conducting laboratory analysis of every ingredient used in his treatments. He discovered active compounds that completely justified the effects observed in the children. Professor, here are the analysis results, said Matthew, presenting a complete dossier to his advisor. Each plant has specific components that act on different aspects of children's digestion. The professor examined the data with growing interest. Matthew, these results are impressive. You managed to isolate compounds that the pharmaceutical industry hadn't yet identified for this type of problem. It's my grandmother's knowledge translated into scientific language, Professor. This deserves publication in an international journal. Would you be interested in turning this into a master's thesis? Do you think it's worthwhile? Matthew, this could revolutionize the treatment of childhood digestive disorders. Of course it's worthwhile. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 years later, the Anderson family's life had completely changed. Emily, now 8 years old, was growing up healthy and strong. Her hair had grown back blonde and curly, and she ran through the mansion gardens with the energy of any child her age. The Emily Anderson Foundation had already treated over 200 children, with a success rate exceeding 80%. Matthew had graduated from medical school with honors and started a master's degree in pharmacognosy, studying medicinal plants. Richard discovered a new passion beyond business, closely following advances in integrative medicine. His company had diversified, heavily investing in functional food research. Jennifer became one of the main advocates for integrative medicine in the United States, speaking at national and international conferences about the importance of combining traditional knowledge with scientific rigor. But it was during an ordinary Saturday afternoon that an unexpected situation tested the family's unity once again. Emily was playing in the garden when she tripped and fell, seriously injuring her knee. The wound wouldn't stop bleeding, and she was crying intensely. Jennifer, with her medical instincts, immediately wanted to take her daughter to the hospital to suture the cut. Richard, call the driver. We have to go to the hospital now. Jennifer, calm down. Let me look at the injury first. Richard, there's no time to lose. This cut might need stitches. Matthew, who was pruning nearby rose bushes, heard the shouts and approached. Can I help? Matthew, can you prepare something to ease her pain while we go to the hospital? Asked Richard. Jennifer hesitated. Over the past 2 years, she had learned to completely trust Matthew's knowledge for digestive issues, but injuries were traditional medical territory. Richard, external injuries are different. We need conventional medical care. Dr. Jennifer, may I take a look? Asked Matthew. My grandmother also knew how to treat injuries. Jennifer reluctantly allowed Matthew to examine the wound. It's a deep cut, but clean. It didn't hit any important vessels. With the right care, it can heal perfectly without stitches. Matthew, I'm a doctor. I know when an injury needs suturing. Doctor, you trust me to take care of Emily's digestion, but you don't trust me to care for a simple injury. Matthew's question made Jennifer reflect. For 2 years, she had seen result after result that challenged her traditional medical convictions. Why would this be different now? All right, Matthew, but if I notice any complications, we go to the hospital immediately. Perfect, doctor. Matthew carefully cleaned the wound with an antiseptic herbal solution, applied a natural healing paste, and bandaged Emily's knee with perfect technique. Uncle Matthew, it doesn't hurt anymore, said Emily, surprised. The paste has a natural anesthetic, princess. Soon you'll be running again. Jennifer observed the procedure with critical eyes. Matthew's technique was impeccable, his movements precise and confident. Where did you learn to treat wounds with such precision? During the years taking care of my grandmother, doctor. She was very elderly and would get hurt frequently. I had to learn to care for cuts, burns, bruises. And the materials you used? All from our garden. Antiseptic, pain-relieving and healing plants. My grandmother taught me that nature has a remedy for almost everything. In 3 days, Emily's wound had healed completely, without leaving a visible scar. Jennifer was impressed with the speed and quality of the healing. Matthew, I need to admit that your knowledge goes far beyond what I imagined. Doctor, my grandmother always said that good medicine is complete medicine. The human body isn't just one specialty. This episode definitively solidified Jennifer's trust in Matthew's traditional knowledge. She began studying other areas of folk medicine, discovering a universe of possibilities that her academic training had not presented. Richard, I'm thinking of proposing to the Foundation that we expand our work beyond digestive problems. What kind of expansion do you have in mind? Matthew has demonstrated knowledge in various areas. Perhaps we could create protocols for other childhood conditions. That's an interesting idea. Let's talk with him. When they presented the proposal to Matthew, he was hesitant. Mr. Richard, Dr. Jennifer, I feel comfortable with digestive problems because I had much time to study and practice. Other areas might be riskier. Matthew, we're not suggesting you act as a doctor in all specialties, explained Jennifer. But your knowledge of medicinal plants could complement conventional treatments in various situations. How so? For example, children with respiratory problems, skin issues, sleep disorders, not to replace medical treatment, but to enhance it. Richard added, Matthew, you saved my daughter when conventional medicine failed. Imagine how many other children could benefit from an integrative approach. I'll think about it, but I want to study extensively before accepting any additional responsibility. Of course, Matthew, we can start with pilot studies, less complex cases, always with strict medical supervision. The Foundation's expansion brought surprising results. In 6 months, they had developed integrative protocols for childhood asthma, atopic dermatitis, and sleep disorders. The results were consistently superior to isolated conventional treatments. Matthew, the data is impressive, said Jennifer, analyzing the reports. Children treated with an integrative approach show 40% faster improvement than those treated only conventionally. It's what my grandmother always said, doctor. When we treat the whole child, not just the symptoms, the body responds better. This has huge implications for national pediatrics. We need to document everything for scientific publication. Richard, seeing the growing impact of the work, began receiving invitations for corporate lectures about integrative medicine, applied to corporate health. Jennifer, they're inviting me to speak about how our experience with Emily could be applied to occupational health programs. That's an interesting opportunity, Richard. Integrative medicine doesn't apply only to pediatrics. The problem is I don't understand anything about the subject. The one who should be lecturing is Matthew. Why don't you both speak together? You could talk about the business aspect and he about the technical side. Jennifer's suggestion marked a new phase in Richard's career. He discovered that his experience as a father and businessman created a unique perspective on integrative medicine that greatly interested the corporate world. Matthew, companies are spending fortunes on health plans that don't solve root problems, Richard commented after a lecture. They want to understand how preventive approaches can reduce costs and improve outcomes. Mr. Richard, preventive medicine was always the focus of my grandmother's knowledge. She used to say, it's better to avoid illness than to try to cure it afterward. Exactly. And companies are starting to understand that investing in prevention is more economical than treating established illnesses. Emily, now almost 9 years old, followed these conversations with precocious interest. Daddy, can I go to your lectures to tell how Uncle Matthew healed me? Sweetheart, you're still too young for that type of event. But I can explain better than anyone what it was like to be sick and how I felt when I got better. Jennifer thought the idea was interesting. Richard, personal testimonials are very powerful in medical lectures. Emily could be a child spokesperson for integrative medicine. Jennifer, I don't want to expose our daughter publicly. She's already been through enough trauma. I'm not suggesting commercial exploitation, but perhaps she could help at some specific events when she feels comfortable. Emily insisted so much that Richard and Jennifer decided to do a trial. They took her to a small lecture, just for healthcare professionals. Hi, my name is Emily, and I had an illness that made me unable to eat anything. The doctors said I only had 4 months to live. The audience fell into absolute silence, captivated by the girl's sincerity. But Uncle Matthew, who takes care of our garden, knew special recipes that made me better. Now I eat everything and run a lot. The emotional impact of Emily's testimony was so strong that several doctors from the audience approached after the lecture to learn more about the Foundation's methods. Richard, Emily has a natural gift for communication, Jennifer commented. She can translate complex medical concepts in a way everyone understands. I agree, but I don't want this to become an obligation for her. If she wants to participate occasionally, that's fine, but no pressure. Emily loved the experience and began asking to accompany her parents to smaller events, always spontaneously, without a prepared script, telling her story with a child's naturalness. During one of these lectures, something unexpected happened that would change the course of everything. In the auditorium was present Dr. Michael Roberts, director of the largest children's hospital in the country. Mr. Anderson, Dr. Jennifer, Matthew, I would like to make a formal proposal. What kind of proposal, Dr. Michael? Asked Richard. I want to implement an integrative medicine department at our hospital. Would you accept coordinating this project? Jennifer was surprised. Dr. Michael, this would be a milestone in American medicine, a traditional hospital officially making space for integrative medicine. Exactly. Your results are undeniable. We have hundreds of children who could benefit from this approach. Matthew intervened. Doctor, this would be a great responsibility. Our work at the Foundation is on a small, controlled scale. That's why I'm proposing a gradual implementation. We start with selected cases, well-established protocols, always with rigorous medical supervision. Richard, ever pragmatic, asked, what kind of structure would be needed? We would create the first center for integrative pediatric medicine in the country. Unlimited resources, multidisciplinary team, cutting-edge research. The proposal was tempting but also frightening. It meant leaving the comfort zone of the Foundation and facing the scrutiny of the entire national medical community. Dr. Michael, we need to discuss this as a family before giving an answer. Of course, Richard, but don't take too long. We have children who need this approach now. That night, the Anderson family had the most important conversation of their lives. Richard, this opportunity could transform pediatric medicine in the United States, said Jennifer, but it could also ruin our reputation if something goes wrong. Matthew, What's your opinion? Mr. Richard, I'm afraid, at the foundation we know every child personally. In a big hospital, everything would be very impersonal. Emily, who was listening from the stairs, came down and joined the conversation. Can I say something? Of course, sweetheart. Uncle Matthew, when you saved me, how many children like me were there in the world? Many, Princess. Unfortunately, many. And how many of those children have an Uncle Matthew to save them? Emily's simple question got to the heart of the matter. Matthew looked at the girl with tears in his eyes. You're right, Princess. If I can help more children, I have to try. Richard smiled. Then it's decided. We'll accept Dr. Michael's proposal. But with conditions, added Jennifer. We want full autonomy over the protocols and the team, and Emily participates in decisions whenever it affects her testimony or image. And I want to keep tending the garden at our house, said Matthew. That's where the plants that saved Emily grow. I can't abandon that place. Agreed, said Richard. We're going to turn this into the biggest revolution in American pediatric medicine. Emily clapped her hands, excited. We're going to save lots of children, right, Uncle Matthew? Yes, we are, Princess. With the help of your family and Grandma's plants, we're going to help many children get healthy like you. The implementation of the Center for Integrative Medicine was more challenging than anyone had imagined. Resistance from traditional doctors, hospital bureaucracy, distrust from patients' parents, each day brought new obstacles. Matthew, some doctors are publicly questioning our methods, said Jennifer, worried. They're calling our approach backyard medicine. Doctor, there will always be resistance to what's new. My grandmother used to say that people afraid of change prefer to criticize rather than try to understand. But these criticisms could affect our credibility with patients. Richard suggested a different strategy. What if we organized a scientific symposium? We present all our data, invite international experts, show that our approach has a solid foundation. That's a good idea, Richard. Scientific transparency is our best defense. The first American symposium on integrative pediatric medicine was held 6 months later at the hospital itself. Doctors from across the country attended, many skeptical, others genuinely curious. Emily opened the event with her testimony, now more experienced and articulate. 3 years ago, I was dying. Today I'm here, healthy, because my parents had the courage to accept help from wherever it came. Uncle Matthew isn't a trained doctor, but he knew what the doctors didn't know. The audience was visibly moved by the maturity of the 9-year-old girl. Matthew presented the scientific data from all the cases treated by the foundation, success rate, lab analyses, long-term follow-up, everything meticulously documented. Colleagues, we're not proposing abandoning conventional medicine. We're proposing the smart integration of knowledge that can complement each other. Jennifer spoke about the ethical and scientific aspects of integrative medicine. Medicine should be open to evidence, wherever it comes from. Our role is to scientifically validate what works, not discard it out of prejudice. Richard concluded by speaking about the human aspect of medicine. As a father, I can say that medicine isn't just protocols and statistics. It's hope, it's care. It's not giving up when all conventional options have been exhausted. The symposium was a milestone. Several hospitals across the country have expressed interest in implementing similar programs. Universities have proposed collaborative research. The initial resistance began giving way to genuine scientific curiosity. Matthew, we did it, said Jennifer, moved at the end of the event. Integrative pediatric medicine is officially recognized in the United States. Doctor, the work is only beginning. Now we have to prove every day that we deserve this trust. Emily, tired after an intense day, snuggled into Matthew's lap. Uncle Matthew, did you save many children today? No, Princess. Today we only began building the tools to save many children. The real work starts tomorrow. And will I keep helping? Always, Princess. You are our inspiration. Richard watched the scene with a full heart. 3 years ago, he was about to lose his daughter. Today, she was healthy and becoming a little ambassador for integrative medicine. Jennifer, do you remember when you thought Matthew was just a gardener? Richard, that's one of life's greatest lessons for me. Knowledge and wisdom can come from anywhere. Our role is to recognize and value them. And Emily, did you imagine our daughter would become the voice of children in integrative medicine? I never imagined, Richard. But now I understand it's all part of a greater purpose. Emily nearly left us to teach us about the importance of being open to new possibilities. Matthew picked up Emily, already asleep, to take her to her room. Mr. Richard, Dr. Jennifer, I want to thank you for believing in me when no one else would. Matthew, you saved our daughter. We are the ones who should be eternally grateful. No, sir. You gave me the chance to use my grandmother's knowledge to help other children. You gave me a family, a career, a life purpose. I owe everything to you. Richard hugged Matthew like a son. Matthew, family isn't just those born together. It's those who choose to stay together in difficult times. You are our family forever. Always, Matthew, agreed Jennifer. And your grandmother is also part of our family, even though she's no longer here. She lives through the good you do for other children. 5 years later, the Center for Integrative Pediatric Medicine had become an international reference. Emily, now 14, was a healthy and socially engaged teenager, presiding over a youth club that raised funds for underprivileged children to receive integrative treatment. Matthew had completed his master's degree and started a doctorate, specializing in pharmacognosy applied to pediatrics. His research had resulted in 3 patented herbal medicines, with royalties fully reverted to the Emily Anderson Foundation. Jennifer became the first tenured professor of integrative pediatric medicine in the country, training a new generation of doctors with a holistic vision. Richard diversified his investments into the healthcare sector, creating the largest network of integrative medicine clinics in North America. But everyone's greatest achievement was seeing hundreds of children who, like Emily, had been given up on by conventional medicine, grow up healthy through integrative treatments. Emily, do you remember when you were sick? Asked Matthew during a Sunday lunch at the mansion. I remember some things, Uncle Matthew. I remember being very weak and sad, and I remember the first day you gave me that tasty green paste. And how did you feel that day? For the first time in a long time, I felt hope. I didn't know what it was, but I felt something was changing. Richard and Jennifer exchanged emotional glances. The maturity with which Emily spoke about her experience never ceased to amaze them. Emily, do you have any advice for other children going through what you went through? Asked Jennifer. Yes, Mommy, I want to tell them not to give up. Sometimes healing comes from where we least expect it. Uncle Matthew seemed like just a gardener, but he knew things that saved my life. And for the parents of these children, Richard continued, to the parents I would say that sometimes you need to have the courage to trust different things. My dad trusted Uncle Matthew when everyone thought he was crazy. My mom changed her mind when she saw I was getting better. Courage to change your mind is important too. Matthew was moved by the teenager's wisdom. Emily, you've become an amazing person. Your grandmother would be very proud. Uncle Matthew, sometimes I dream about your grandmother. She's always in a garden full of plants and smiles at me. I think she's happy seeing how many children we've helped. I'm sure she is, Princess. I'm sure she is. At that moment, Richard made an announcement that surprised everyone. Family, I've made an important decision. I want to turn our mansion into a school of integrative medicine. Matthew's garden will be a living laboratory for students from all over the world. Richard, are you sure? This has been our home for 20 years, said Jennifer. Exactly why, Jennifer? This house saw Emily almost leave and return to life. This garden has the plants that saved her. There's no place in the world more suited to teach integrative medicine. Emily clapped excitedly. Daddy, what a wonderful idea. Imagine how many doctors like Uncle Matthew can learn here. And you, Matthew, what do you think of the idea? Mr. Richard, it would be the fulfillment of my grandmother's greatest dream. She always said good knowledge should be shared with the whole world. Then it's decided. We'll create the Emily Anderson International School of Integrative Pediatric Medicine. Jennifer stood up and hugged her husband. Richard, you never cease to amaze me. Sometimes your ideas seem crazy, but they always turn out to be brilliant. I've learned from you that the best decisions in life are those we make with our hearts, not just with reason. The transformation of the mansion into a school took 2 years to complete. Matthew's garden was expanded and turned into one of the world's most comprehensive centers for the study of medicinal plants. The house was adapted to receive international students and researchers. Emily, at 16, became the youngest ambassador for the World Health Organization for Integrative Pediatric Medicine, traveling the world telling her story and encouraging similar programs in other countries. "Mommy, it's amazing to see how our story has inspired people all over the world," said Emily, returning from a trip to Europe. "I met a girl in England who was in the same situation I was and was cured with local plants, following our adapted protocols. Emily, this shows that Matthew's grandmother's knowledge was universal. Different plants, same principles. And the coolest thing is that every country is discovering its own medicinal plants for children. They don't need to copy exactly what we do here." Matthew, now Dr. Matthew, scientific director of the school, listened to the conversation with pride. "Emily, my grandmother always said nature is generous. In every corner of the world there are plants that can heal. You just need to know how to look and respect." "Uncle Matthew, do you think your grandmother imagined her knowledge would go so far?" "I think so, Princess. She always told me, 'Matthew, one day you'll take these recipes to the whole world.' At the time, I thought she was dreaming too big." Richard entered the room at that moment, holding an official envelope. "Family, an important letter has arrived." "What is it, Dad?" "Johns Hopkins University is inviting our school for an official partnership. They want to create an exchange program for integrative medicine students." Jennifer held the envelope with trembling hands. "Richard, this is definitive international recognition of our work." "And of Matthew's grandmother's knowledge," added Emily. "A simple lady from the countryside of Vermont, inspiring the most prestigious university in the world. The most beautiful part is that it all started with a desperate father, a sick daughter, and a humble gardener," reflected Matthew. "Sometimes the biggest transformations come from the simplest moments." Richard embraced his family, biological and chosen. "Matthew, do you remember what you told me on the first day when you asked to try to help Emily?" "I remember, Mr. Richard. I said my grandmother knew special recipes for children who couldn't eat." "You saved so much more than my daughter that day. You saved our entire family and transformed pediatric medicine worldwide." "Mr. Richard, I only used what I learned from my grandmother. The credit is all hers." Emily intervened. "Uncle Matthew, the credit is yours. You had the courage to offer help when you could have been rejected. You had the courage to believe in your own knowledge when everyone doubted. And we had the courage to accept help from wherever it came," added Jennifer. "That changed our view of medicine and life. And now thousands of families around the world have the same opportunity we had," concluded Richard. "To find hope where it seemed impossible." Emily smiled, looking out the window at the garden where it all began. "Do you know what moves me the most about this whole story?" "What, honey?" "It's thinking that somewhere in the world, right at this moment, there's a sick child who will be saved because of what started here. A child I'll never meet, but who will live because you all believed in Uncle Matthew. And because Uncle Matthew believed in his grandmother's knowledge," added Matthew. "And because his grandmother believed that good knowledge should be shared," said Jennifer. "It's a chain of love and knowledge that will never end," concluded Richard. At that moment, as if it were a sign, Emily ran to the garden and picked a flower from the same plant that had been used in the first recipe that saved her. "Uncle Matthew, this flower is for you. To always remember that your love and dedication transformed the world." Matthew held the flower with tears in his eyes. "Emily, this flower is in memory of my grandmother. Everything we achieved was because she planted the seeds of knowledge in my heart." "Then let's plant it in the school garden," suggested Richard, "so it can grow and spread, inspiring future generations of integrative doctors." "Perfect, Dad. That way, it will keep helping children forever." And so, a story that began with despair and a hopeless diagnosis turned into a worldwide medical revolution, proving that sometimes the greatest cures come from the most unexpected places, through the most unlikely people, driven by the purest love for others. End of story. So what did you think of this moving story? Did Matthew truly deserve the chance Richard gave him? Do you believe integrative medicine can transform lives like it did for Emily? Share your thoughts on this journey of faith, hope, and ancestral knowledge in the comments. Your like and subscription to the channel motivate us to keep bringing touching stories like this one. Until next time.